Afternoon and welcome to the Ordinary Council meeting for 23rd of November 2023, otherwise known as Dubbo Day, 174th anniversary of the Gazettal of Dubbo as a village. So welcome to Dubbo Day, everyone. I advise that this meeting is being streamed live to the internet. All those present should refrain from making any defamatory statements, and upon joining these online meetings, you accept the condition that your image may be recorded and streamed to the internet, as well as being retained in the archive of the recorded council meetings and standing committee meetings. I now officially open the 23rd November 2023 Ordinary Council meeting, the time being 5:31 p.m. Can I ask Councillor Wright to do the prayer, please?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr Mayor. O God, grant that by the knowledge of thy will, all we may resolve shall work together for good. We pray through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Can I also ask Councillor Burns to do Welcome to Country?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people who are the traditional custodians of the land. I'd also like to pay respects to elders past, present and emerging of the Wiradjuri nation and extend that respect to other Aboriginal people from other nations who are present. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. So we've got no leave of absence. I do note that Councillor Pam Wells is attending via audio-visual link tonight. So I'll move on, and I just want to pause the meeting briefly because I've got some awards that I'd like to acknowledge some of our staff, some of our team, some of the wonderful work that they've done, and present those awards to a couple of people. So first of all, I'd like to ask Julie Webster to come to the microphone, and Julie's the Old Dubbo Jail Operations Coordinator. And there are a couple of awards that I'd like Julie to talk about, first of all, and we'll present those awards to you and your team in a moment, Julie. But if you could just talk about those couple of awards, first of all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Old Dubbo Jail, myself and Jamie Angus attended the New South Wales Tourism Awards. We came away with a silver for cultural tourism for Old Dubbo Jail, bronze for tourism attraction for Old Dubbo Jail, and a Dubbo Regional Council Local Government Tourism Award for silver. Very pleased with this success, and we look forward to the 2024 and maybe exceeding that.
So pause in a moment. I'll get you to come and accept those awards officially. But before we do that, I'd just like to ask Caitlin Colliver, Manager Customer Experience and Engagement, to come forward and tell us about a couple of your awards, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So Dubbo Regional Council were nominated in the National Local Government Customer Service Network Awards across two categories. So the two categories that we were nominated as a finalist were the National Customer Service Team of the Year and also National Innovation Award of the Year. Dubbo Regional Council and our team were fortunate enough to come away as the runners-up or the highly commended across both categories. So I'm very, very proud of the team and all of their achievements in getting industry recognition. So thank you.
Congratulations. I'll just duck around here and grab those couple of awards. I'll do Julie with yours first, then Caitlin. Thank you, Julie and Caitlin, for coming along and explaining those to us, but also congratulations to two members of our team, and obviously a large team behind those two members there. And again, it's great to see council recognised externally for some of the great work that we do. Next item is CCL 23/304, conflicts of interest. Councillor Mann.
How's that? Item CCL 23/323. I'd like to declare a non-pecuniary, non-significant interest in that topic, in that subject. I have a close family friend relationship.
I think Councillor Mann, that was a non-pecuniary, less than significant in there. And Councillor Chowdhury.
23/92 non-pecuniary and less than significant interest, because I was the part of ORISCON committee before, but not any longer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. No other conflicts of interest for any councillors? No. Next item is CCL 23/305, public forum. We've got... Oh, okay, thank you. So we have got one person registered for public forum, and they're going to come in remotely. I've got no one in the gallery there, so I assume no one else wants to talk from a public forum perspective there. So we'll just wait a moment there, Ms. Wade, and we'll get that particular one. While we're waiting for that, I might just jump forward to confirmation of minutes while we're waiting for that link to go through. So I'll just adjourn 23/305 and I'll come back to that. Next item, CCL 23/306, confirmation of minutes. Can I have someone? Councillor Black moved, seconded by Councillor Wright. Any discussion or debate? There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Thank you. I'll continue on, Ms. Wade, until our registered speaker comes in. The next item is CCL 23/307, mayoral appointments and meetings. So I'll move that way, please. Thank you, Councillor Ivey, seconded by Councillor Goff. Councillor Ivey, do you wish to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, just in speaking to it, can I perhaps just ask a question and some clarification? I noticed that on Wednesday, the 18th of October, you attended the Ironbark Arts residency event. And I'd just like if you'd just explain a little bit what that involved, what that artist in residence involves.
Certainly, thank you, Councillor Ivey. It actually is a great program, and Stuart Town does certainly punch above its weight for its population. They've actually done some work there, and they've got a lease agreement with council to utilise an old building there, an old heritage building there in Stuart Town, and they do actually bring artists in for a period of time. I think it's approximately 2 weeks. In that 2 weeks, their job is to create some artwork, not necessarily that they will leave there, but typically artists do leave some artwork there, and different types of art. So, for example, there was one gentleman there who created some music in conjunction with some of the birds that he heard around that particular area. And he said the first thing he noticed when he got there was birds that he'd never heard before. And that inspired him to create some music, and he actually played the song that he'd created as part of that. The other two artists were more, I suppose, traditional art in terms of drawing and painting, and again, they were inspired by the landscape there, and so effectively they created some artwork there that will be left out there in Stuart Town. This is an ongoing program they've got. I'm not sure exactly how many weeks a year they're allowed to utilise that particular building, but that's the idea, is they utilise that building on an ongoing basis and bring artists in, let them create artwork for themselves, but also leave some legacy there. In 10 years' time, I think we'll see a huge amount of fantastic artworks there that were created for it. So a really good program.
Could I just ask a follow-up question with that? As I understand it, that building is owned by council, so it's a building that council provides to the community, the maintenance of which is partly the responsibility of the local community, as I understand it. Is that correct?
I know there was some issues when we first got elected, there were some discussions with some people in Stuart Town about the lease on that, because they'd had some problems getting a lease organised before to allow them to do that, and now staff sorted that out and they're now able to do that. I can't tell at the top of my head who's responsible for the maintenance. I don't have that information, sorry. I'm not sure if the CEO has the information off the top of his head.
So we have the overarching responsibility for asset management of the building, but then there's elements that get undertaken by the group as part of the licence agreement.
Thank you. So, but again, they seem like they're very keen and they're obviously very motivated out there to make sure things continue to happen. So it's good work to that group out there. Nothing else further, Councillor Ivey? Okay, nothing else, councillors? Okay, there being nothing, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Ms Wade, how did you go? Right, we'll continue on and I'll come back to that if and when we need to. Next item, CCL 23/308, monthly reporting snapshot for councillors. Can someone move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Bright. Seconded by Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Wright, do you wish to speak to that?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question, actually. There's a lot of statistics in there, and you can spend all day poring over them. But I did notice something drew my attention: the customer experience charter and the call centre efficiency had improved that month, and the call abandon rate had decreased. And I'm guessing that's got to do with the fact that people aren't on hold for as long. But I guess one of my questions was with regards to some of the numbers that we're starting to see through the call centre, and if we're seeing a bit of trend on people looking for alternative ways to contact council, whether that's online or through the DRC and Me portal, and if that's sort of assisting with that improvement of service through the call centre.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. And it's interesting because I know our community needs survey, which is done biannually. Then you see some differences. I remember seeing in the past differences in how people are receiving information from council and how they're contacting council. But for specific information along those lines, I'll go through Mr. CEO to Ms. Kumar.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think there's a number of reasons that are impacting the reduction in calls, and they're positive reasons in regards to the increased way we're serving our community. A few I'd call out would be things like the annual bulky waste program. So we now have set up a dedicated project page and some extensive communications around that program. So that's less people calling up and requesting information. We've also introduced some increased efficiencies in regards to our customer request management, which sees council staff more proactively responding back to customers, reducing the need for them to actually call and follow up and the like as well. So we're seeing some great improvements across the organisation in that regard. And also putting services more online. For example, people can now order organic caddy liners online, which is reducing calls of that nature. And also things like from the DRC and Me portal as well, the transactions that our customers want to do and our community want to do online. For example, the team introduced the rates balance and transaction summary, which is now available, which has significantly reduced the calls we get regarding rates, and that's around 50 a month that are being undertaken as well. So, and in addition to things like our web chat as well, our community is increasingly using web chat, which are real people responding to questions from the community, and people are finding that's a way that they want to interact as well. So that's also reducing calls through to the customer experience team.
Thank you, Ms. Kumar. Anything further from that, Councillor Wright?
No, that's good. Thank you.
Any other further questions? Councillor Ivey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a follow-up question to that. I noticed the number of counter transactions per month in recent months, anyway, has been higher than last year, which means that there seems to be an increasing trend. I find that a little bit surprising. I would have thought that in this internet-based age, maybe that would be down. So perhaps a comment on that, if that's a real trend or whether it's just a bit of an aberration.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Through Mr. CEO to Ms. Kumar.
I think it's a bit of an aberration in regards to rates payments when that's also required. And I think looking at long-term trends, the impact that we had in regards to, COVID and the like, with changes in that in terms of our actual CX centre being open and the like, in regards to the longer-term trends of that. But certainly it does peak when there are, the transactions of rates, and people still do want to come in and have that interaction in regards to paying rates.
Thank you, Ms. Kumar. Follow-up question, Councillor?
Follow-up comment on that. I don't know if that's quite right, because compared month on month, this year compared to last year and the year before, each year, and they were all post-COVID periods, the number of transactions per month is actually going up compared with the month in the previous years. But anyway, but the other thing is...
Sorry, just on that point, Councillor Ivey, do you want the CEO or Ms Coomer to address that one in particular?
Perhaps, yes, please, just a comment on that.
Yeah, sure. Mr CEO?
I might add there's also that people have appointments, and particularly to do with projects, development proponents, and what have you, start at customer experience and get a ticket. And I've certainly noticed, and this is somewhat of an anecdote, I'd have to back it up with some further data, but I've certainly noticed an increase in those types of meetings coming through our front counter as well. So there is some other pulses of activity separate to the normal standard transactions of council. We are, even though there are economic headwinds, we are having a lot of appetite for investment in a variety of forms in our council area. So that could be some of that mix, I would suggest as well. But anything further, Ms Coomer? I think nothing at this point. We'll have to take that on notice to get more information.
Thank you, CEO. Councillor Ivey?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And in fact, as I say, I really have got to go on and ask lots and lots of questions because there really is some very useful information in those graphs. And it's like everything, though, that information's only ever any use if you make use of it. It's all very good to have a look at it, but I think so to actually draw some conclusions and draw some actions from those the graphs is very should be encouraged. One of the just the other comment I might make or a comment I might raise and therefore ask a response to it is that I noticed the numbers of the visitors to the visitor information centres both in Dubbo and Wellington is showing quite a significant downward trend. And I just wonder perhaps why that is and whether it's something of long-term significance where people perhaps aren't necessarily needing to go to a visitor information centre. Can they get that information from the internet or from the web page or what? And is that an issue which staff are having a look at?
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Go through Mr CEO to Ms Coomer.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor, I think looking at the numbers, I guess you could say it is a reoccurring trend. Looking at the last 12 months, both are probably consistently under the year before. And I think that trend's being impacted by, similar to the customer experience area, the way that customers, visitors want to interact, but also increases and improvements that we're making in our digital space and providing that information online as well is probably also reducing those numbers. And we certainly need, like any parts of our business, need to look at those services and how we're adjusting and resourcing and delivering those services so they continue to be efficient, but we continue to meet the needs of visitors in that regard.
Thank you, Ms Coomer. Councillor Ivey, further questions, comments? And I agree with you, Councillor Ivey, there's some fascinating information in there and I'd encourage the community to have a look through that, and you might draw different conclusions from it, but it actually is quite fascinating to read through that information and see what's in there. Further questions or comments in relation to that? Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I note that it says domestic waste and looking at the FOGO for the month, but I've got a question about to business waste. Is there a possibility of rolling out a green bin for businesses?
So I'll take that through to Ms CEO, to Mr Wallace.
Through you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Goff. It is something that staff are playing with, so we have restricted resources in that area, but proactively whenever the team are getting a chance. At the moment, they're representing themselves at community events and markets to get that message out there that we really are calling on commercial businesses, particularly food businesses like cafes and restaurants, to take up the offer of green bins. The staff are calling in, making cold calls as well to various businesses around Wellington and Dubbo, and there's a bit of an uptake starting to happen in that area. So we really do, it's good quality food organics. Otherwise, there's a large portion of garden organics. So the food organics helps to balance that out. And it also improves the volume that we've got going through the FOGO Centre. So it's something we're very keen to promote, and we're starting on that process now, and we'll get a bit more methodic about it as time goes on.
Thank you, Mr Wallace. Councillor Goff, anything further? Okay, thank you. Any other further comments or questions, councillors? No? Councillor Wright, do you wish a right of reply?
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Okay, I have the CCL 23/308 before us now. Councillors, all those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Now, we'll just return to public forum. There was, say, one gentleman registered for public forum, and unfortunately he's driving at the moment. Obviously not physically here, he was going to be physically here, and he did ask if he could actually do a submission via telephone. Our code of meeting procedure says that we have the ability to hear oral submissions from members of the public, obviously, which is what normally happens. And as we've had happen before, it also says that public forums may be held by audio-visual link. So we have had that happen before where people have come in via audio-visual link. Our code of meeting procedure makes no ability for people to come in via a phone call. And I understand that because people are viewing it publicly and it seems fair and reasonable they can see and hear who is talking. So if we did it via a phone call, it would be held to a microphone. But again, I don't believe that conforms to the code of meeting practice, which specifically says audio-visual link and nothing about an actual audio call. So I'm not going to allow that call to come in, and that gentleman's being talked to at the moment, but to come in for public submission or public forum via that. He did register, but he didn't end up turning up. So that in mind, we've got no other registered speakers and no one else in the gallery. So CCL 23/305 public forum, I'll declare that finished and we'll move on from there. So the next item is CCL 23/309, report of the Financial Performance Committee, meeting of 16th of November, moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Etheridge. Councillor Wright, do you wish to speak to that?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I won't go on a great deal here because we will discuss this again in a bit of detail in a few more items' time. But in that particular report, FP 23/35 was this financial sustainability review next steps. And as the chair of that committee, I was present for that meeting, and staff did provide some information with respect to the next steps regarding that for financial sustainability review, which is obviously a pretty extensive document. Following some conversations around that with members of the committee, it was suggested that a particular item be brought to this meeting to be discussed and add to a motion, which we'll see, like I said, in another couple of items' time. So certainly a good outcome of that particular committee, and I know a lot of those committees do have some great outcomes, and I think this will be a good outcome, and hopefully you'll get some support of councillors a little later on this evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Any other discussion or debate, councillors? No, there being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. CCL 23/310, report of the Public Spaces Tree Committee, moved by Councillor Black, seconded by Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Black, do you wish to speak to that?
Yes, just very briefly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was a lot of discussion in the Public Spaces Tree Committee on the 1st of November about the tree preservation order. Very good discussion there about how it would work, some of the implications, how we can increase the canopy cover around Dubbo and Wellington, make it more livable. Cities into the future with variable climate and climate change and climate heating and all those sort of things. One thing to do directly with that committee is where we got a price back on the tree preservation order survey, up to $35,000. Now, that got up 5-5, I think it was last meeting with the Mayor's casting vote, the amendment. But I'd like to foreshadow that the next meeting, the December meeting, I'm going to move a rescission motion to do with that $35,000 survey on the tree preservation order, because I just think that that would be a complete waste of ratepayers' money. So I'll put that there, and that'll be at the December meeting. We can't just spend 35 grand, up to 35,000 on a survey when we haven't even got a tree preservation order to ask people exactly what they want. Thank you.
So, Councillor Black, I just want to clarify something here, specifically in relation to the rescission motion. Obviously, once action's been taken, rescission motion can't proceed, but are you formally giving notice of motion of rescission in relation to that particular item from last month, so that any action that hasn't started yet can stop now and not proceed before you actually bring that rescission motion forward?
Yes, that's the idea. Thank you.
Thank you. I might come back to that, but I'll just deal with the 23/310 first of all. In relation to the Public Spaces Tree Committee, any other speakers in relation to that? No? Okay, I'll put that then. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Just give me 1 second. I just want to check something with the CEO before I proceed to the next item? So I might come back to you, Councillor Black, in a moment just to get you to formally move a notice of motion of rescission, because obviously you've got to have other people to move that. Let's give a notice at the moment, but I'll just come back. I'll just get the CEO to work on some technicalities for me. So keep that thought in the back of your mind, and I'll come back to you in a moment. We'll proceed with the rest of the meeting. That's fine? That makes sense? Yeah, right, thank you. Okay, next item, CCL 23/311, report of the Disability Access and Inclusion Advisory Committee. I'll have that moved, please, by Councillor Wells, seconded by Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Wells, do you wish to speak to that particular meeting?
Look, the Disability Action Plan Committees met again, and we had probably a few missing, but it seems to be gaining momentum. Lots of discussions, and I think Director Craig Arms might, if he wants to add any more to the conversation, given that I'm not in a great service area at the moment, he might wish to. But otherwise, it's continuing on, and lots of questions around social media were raised through the Disability Action Plan Committee, particularly around the facilities, the toilet block over west and around the cracks. So we had quite a bit of a discussion around that and the access to the toilet with the Malak key. But as I said, it's progressing along, and I think hoped for it to continue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Any further discussion or debate, councillors? There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item, CCL 23/312, report of the Infrastructure Planning and Environment Committee. Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to move that save and accept the report of the Infrastructure and Planning and Environment Committee meeting held on 9th of November 2023 be adopted. Save and accept IPC 23/53, which we'll deal with separately, please.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Have someone second that, please. Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. Do you wish to speak to the motion of the overall committee, Councillor Wright?
I don't think so. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I'll take it that you reserve your right to speak later. Any further discussion about the Infrastructure Planning and Environment Committee? No. Sorry, Councillor Wells.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just curious about, is this the year I need to do the amendment?
So thank you, Councillor Wells. So this is dealing with the rest of the meeting except that one item involving the bridge. So we'll deal with the rest of the committee meeting, and then the next item we'll deal with will be the bridge because we've pulled it out of the meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other discussion or debate, councillors? There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. So now, Councillor Wright, if I can ask you to move that item that was accepted.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So now looking to move item IPC 23/53 of the Infrastructure Planning and Environment Committee meeting held on the 9th of November 2023, please.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Have someone second that, please. Thank you, Councillor Goff. So now, Councillor Wells, if you would like to move an amendment to that, that would be the time to do it now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, I would like to move an amendment, and I'm just, sorry, trying to tussle with the screens here. Am I right to progress with the amendment, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. Yep. If you just read out that amendment you'd like to move.
Shall do. So the amendment reads, the IPEC 23/53 for the New Dubbo Bridge update, that is point 1 is that council endorsed the reclassification of the Burke Street from River Street to Erskine Street from a state road to a regional road following the completion of the bridge and associated works, and the acceptable condition of the road prior to the formalisation of the reclassification. Point 2, that council partner with Transport for New South Wales on the consultation process for the naming of the new bridge as detailed in the report. Point 3, which is where the change is that council preferred council's preferred name for the new Dubbo Bridge shall be a traditional owner's name relevant to the location and or function of the bridge, such as crossing place on a river. And point 4 is that this resolution of council be the focus of the community consultation undertaken by Transport New South Wales.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. I'll get a seconder for your amendment. If I can, thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Wells, I can ask you to speak to your amendment, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think the opportunity for traditional owners and consultation across the community to participate in the naming of the bridge is really important for this community, despite a few years ago when there was a lot of different type of media and social media interaction around the bridge. This actually brings a positive flavour to the bridge, and that the traditional owners and also the Aboriginal people can utilise the new blended Wiradjuri language, based on some consultation. So I'm just really, I think it's a great opportunity for the community to do some consultation on the naming. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Do we have any other speakers on the amendment only at this stage? You can speak on everyone can speak again on the amendment, so you can speak on the amendment, Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a question then, or a couple of questions possibly. First one is just more about the intention. Obviously, this would go to community consultation, and my understanding is that council wouldn't have the final say on the name. Transport for New South Wales would. That's one question. And would it mean if it does go to community consultation, council would only accept interest from community with references to an Aboriginal name or Indigenous name? Is that my understanding?
And so there's two parts that I'll talk about the first one first, and it's a maybe, because the understanding that I have, and I'm happy to, if the CEO wants to send me to one of the staff here about that, but my understanding typically is that council has the ability to approve a name, which will then go back to Transport for New South Wales for approval. So it seems like a in-between situation where we might approve a name and then it goes to Transport and they don't approve the name. But then it would come back to us to approve a different name, presumably, and then go back. So presumably you need to have both parties, the way I would understand it, even though it seems like we can say what it should be named, they've still got to approve that name. So that would be my first understanding. Mr. CEO, is that correct there?
That is correct. So you have a view, and it'd be unlikely. Again, it's this, we've talked a bit about this relationship with us as a local road authority and Transport as a road authority. We would put council's preferred name, effectively, this is our name, but then Transport does have to approve it ultimately.
So that's the first question. The second question, I suppose, is more about a political question. In other words, if a name came back that was an Aboriginal name and there was another option that might be that's not Aboriginal name, it would still be up to council in a democratic debate to make a decision there. So even though this resolution said the council's preferred name, the way I would read that is that we have a view, if this is resolved, that we prefer an Aboriginal name, but it doesn't say that it's exclusively an Aboriginal name. So council could still make a decision after consultation occurs that it could be an Aboriginal name. We prefer that, but it could be another name as well. Now, I'm happy to go to Councillor Wells. You don't have to answer the question, Councillor Wells. Happy to go to Councillor Wells to see if that is the intention of this motion. Maybe Councillor Wells might want to reword it so that it's definitely an Aboriginal name from her perspective. But that's the way I would read that now. If I was ruling on this, I would say that it's a preferred, not an absolute. Councillor Wells, do you want to add any clarity to that from your motion?
So what I took from the amendment was that the proposal is to have it as a First Nations name or local traditional custodian Wiradjuri language name. So that was the intent.
So again, it would then be up to council as a collective group to make a decision on what names come forward. So play a hypothetical, it goes out to consultation. Transport might come back and say, here are two names. According to that resolution, if one was an Aboriginal name or a traditional owner's name and one was just a famous person from Dubbo's name, then it would be up to council still to decide. But the resolution still would say would prefer the Aboriginal name. Yep. CEO?
I guess the important point is it's community consultation. So the community may come back with something very different to council's preference. So I guess in helping Councillor Wells draft that was the logic about choosing preference, because you can't control what consultation will bring. I guess you're presuming. So I guess that was the why the nuance of that language. I don't think it matters if you make it stronger. I think just be aware that, you know, bridge face may come up, if that makes sense, is the term in urban language these days.
Please don't give people that idea, Mr. CEO. So, Councillor Wright, does that clarify?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And nothing further, Councillor Wright? No. Councillor Ivey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just ask clarification, perhaps through to Councillor Wells, that the focus be on a traditional owner's name with a capital T and a capital O, which is meaning that's a particular group of the Indigenous community within our region. Is that the intention, that it would be just a traditional a name from that particular group of our Indigenous population in the region, or is it, or are you still saying no? Let's consult more widely.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. And I remind you, sorry, Councillor Wells, I do remind you don't have to answer questions from other councillors. It's your choice if you'd like to answer that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to respond to Councillor Ivey. The intent is for it to be a First Nation or Aboriginal name from the language. Traditional owner language may be a smaller cohort of people, and so the intent is to engage the whole wider First Nations community, and using the, you know, possibly using, depending on the consultation, using the, as I said, the blended Wiradjuri language. Does that answer your question, Councillor Ivey?
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Are you happy with that answer? You'd like more clarification there?
Yes, that's what I understand, and I'd certainly support that. I think it's good. But if that's the intent, then why does the motion specifically refer to traditional owners? Why not the First Nations people or the Indigenous population within our regional council?
Thanks, Councillor Ivey. And Councillor Wells, it's your amendment, and with the satisfaction of the seconder of that, if you wanted to change that to be more reflective of that, that's entirely up to you. You'd be allowed to do that if you wanted to. You don't have to, but you could do that if you wanted to.
Like, I don't have a problem with that. I think, yeah, I wouldn't see a problem with that. I'd be keen to hear from the other councillors in the room. I kind of think that the language, pulling it to a smaller cohort makes it a little bit difficult, and you want to be able to engage a broader part of the community, particularly those that have lived in the area for many, many years, and have a say. So it is about community consultation. I don't mind if people so wish to change it to First Nations people of the Dubbo local, Dubbo LGA.
Okay, thank you. So I'll leave it for the moment, Councillor Wells, and we'll continue on the debate. And then if you need to, you can always come forward with that. Councillor Ivey, anything further?
Thank you, Mr. Only to say that personally, I would support the motion if it's made broader to include the whole Indigenous population. I think I would probably vote against it if it stays restrictive just to traditional owners.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate Councillor Wells and Barnes, to Aboriginal leaders sitting here. I have a question through you, Mr. Mayor. So if we focus on preferred, like a traditional or owner, so how you can, like other community group feel like they're inclusive, how we can send a message to the other community, wider community, they feel more inclusive during this consultation.
So the question was, how do we make all groups feel more inclusive? Is that essentially the paraphrasing?
Like a wider community, how they feel like a more inclusive, like when we are saying like we are preferred name would be only traditional owner, like there's other community groups, how they can get involved.
So I suppose, I don't have a precise answer for you, Councillor Chowdhury. I suppose what I would look at is that the consultation process will still occur. Transport for New South Wales will still run that consultation process. The specifics around how they run it would be how the community would feel included. It would be my view of it. They will, if this resolution goes through, they would see that there's a preferred name for traditional owners, but it still gives the opportunity for anyone to put forward, I hate to say it, but, you know, Bridgie McBridgeface, as the CEO mentioned, or whatever name might come forward, they've still got that option. So anyone could bring forward a name. It might be someone from the multicultural community. It might be someone from Dubbo's past. It might be some other culture's name. They could all, as long as Transport for New South Wales ran that consultation correctly, everyone could still feel like they're included. But again, if that resolution was successful, it would be signalled loud and clear that this council preferred a traditional owner's name. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sherry. Other questions? Councillor Burns.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just to clear up the traditional owner thing, capital T, capital O, that's just the people that lived in this tribal area of where Dubbo sits. Can't really talk about that here because we're outside of the Dubbo tribal area. But I would, I still agree with the amendment, and I would recommend maybe if there's a thought that the Transport for New South Wales would not accept the recommendation, then why not put up one or two names? So if not this one, then that one. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Mr CEO, you want to add some clarification to that?
Yes, and I think the traditional owner's name is referring to the language of the traditional owners. It's not referring to a group in terms of the consultation. So they're very distinct parts of, and again, possibly Wire and Assisting Councillor Wells get to this point. So it's about the traditional owners. The language is inherent in that. The name relates to the language of the traditional owners. The consultation piece is that broad brush that Transport does and has to do. So that's the logic in the words behind you. So it's not limiting. So the Wiradjuri language group was a big language area. So that's. I just want to clarify. The name relates to the language, not restricting it to individuals who will be consulted. I just want to make that very, very clear. I will add also, and I might throw to Mr Ryan because he's had some discussions with Transport, and this may come in if Council, I'm not saying this is where you will go, but if Council chose to do a name of a certain type, whatever that may be, but Transport has certain policy settings, and I might throw to you, Mr Ryan, if Mr Mayor, could I beg your indulgence for that clarity for the councillors?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Ryan.
Thank you. And through you, Mr Mayor, there is certainly standards of how bridges are named and what the naming looks like. But I might just touch on the names that are suggested by Transport for New South Wales. It's not going to be one or another. It'll be the list of names that are brought to Transport for New South Wales' attention through that consultation period. So we're not going to get one or another. It could be a list of 100 names, and then it's up to council to then make a decision on which name is going to be the preferred one to send through to Transport for approval. So I hope that clears up that we're not, even throughout the consultation, with an indication that council's talking about here in terms of a First Nations name, we will still get whatever the consultation comes back with in terms of names from anyone, and we might even get the Bridgie McBridgeface. But certainly this doesn't restrict the names that are going to come to council for consideration. I see this as a steer of what council's intention would be in terms of preferencing of a traditional owner or First Nations name for this bridge.
And sorry, Mr. Ryan, just to clarify that, when you say a list of 100 names come back, presumably after the consultation, they're probably not going to bring back 100 names. They'll bring back some preferred names in those options there.
That's correct, Mr Mayor. Yeah, this doesn't restrict the amount of names that can be suggested. They would go through and vet that and get rid of, I guess, the silly type names. But certainly we will get a list of names from Transport for consideration by council.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Ryan. Hopefully that clarifies that a little bit for the CEOs, or from the CEO's perspective. So further discussion, Councillor Wright.
Just a comment, Mr Mayor. I think McBridgeface sounds a little bit more Scottish than traditional owner, so not sure if it'll fit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Further questions? You can't say anything in the debate, Councillor Burns, but you can ask a question. You've had your one go on the debate, but you can ask a question if you like.
I can ask a question. I'm going to change this. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Does anybody realise that the early planning of Dubbo had all of the traditional names of this country running east-west, the streets, Winjiwarra, Balch, all of those, and then all the explorers' running north-south. Just wondered if anyone realised that. And we could continue with that trend because it's an east-west bridge.
Well worded question, Councillor Burns. Thank you.
No answers though.
So further questions or debate, councillors? Councillor Mann.
Well done, Councillor Wells, in putting this amendment forward. And I think current trends around the country show that there's a lot of Aboriginal names now being changed into places like up at the Barrier Reef there and Ngiri, is it? But yeah, right across the country, there seems to be a trend towards going back to traditional names and places, whatever. I can't support this motion, these amendments only based from a representative point of view. I see my role as representing the whole community. To Councillor Chowdhury's comment there earlier, I think there's lots of other vested interests that would be keen to get forward, and I'm not sure that it's our role as a governing body to try and steer that conversation. It's going to go to consultation anyway, and as I say, I'd be really confident that we'll end up with a traditional name, but I just don't see it as our role to be actually voting or steering that conversation. I think that's got to be, I feel myself, it's just got to be neutral.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Any further? Councillor Black.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do tend to agree. I think that we will end up with an Indigenous name for the bridge, but I think that we should give everyone the opportunity to be able to say what they want and have input into that, and then we can make a decision as councillors. So it's a bit like the stance we took as a council with basically the voice debate, where we didn't sort of pick a side or whatever. We just said, right, well, everyone can have their say and bit of direction, and here's what we'd do, etc. And information policy. So I see if we just leave it open to everyone, everyone can have input into it, and then we can make a decision here. And like Councillor Mann said, we do see the trend all over the country of going back to Indigenous names, so we'll probably end up there anyway, but I'd just like to see it open to everyone to come up with whatever they want, because it's not often that you get to name a bridge in your town, so lots of people would like to put something in, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Any further discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Wright, you can ask a question.
Mr. Mayor, can you sit down, maybe just repeat the motion again for me, please, as it stands?
Certainly. So 1 and 2 as in the original recommendation from 2 weeks ago, and then Councillor Wells has added 3 and 4. Point 3, that Council's preferred name for the new Dubbo Bridge shall be a traditional owner's name relevant to the location and or function of the bridge, such as a crossing place on a river. Point 4, that this resolution of Council be the focus of the community consultation undertaken by Transport for New South Wales. Thank you. So further questions, debate, discussion, councillors? So you have got a right of reply, Councillor Wright, on this, but before we do that, I just want to go to Councillor Wells, only because there was that little brief discussion at the beginning, Councillor Wells, in relation to whether or not you wanted to modify it slightly, entirely up to you. You could change traditional owner's name with another name if you wanted to. There's been a bit of clarification by Councillor Burns and by the CEO around that, but that's entirely up to you. I'd be happy to accept that, and the debate to me would still be the same if you think that's necessary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'd be happy to expand and instead of saying traditional owners to saying First Nations group. I'm hearing the debate in the room around expanding it to the whole of community, and I kind of get that and understand it. I just think there's very little opportunity for us to have, so I know that there are emerging cultural, traditional or First Nation names across our state and nation.
Sorry, Councillor Wells, I'll pick you up there. I'll let you go for a little bit longer, but
Yeah.
you can't enter the debate again. You've already been in the debate once, so it was just a courtesy question whether or not you wanted to change that from traditional owners to be whatever. I won't put words in your mouth, but something else in there that would be similar enough. Again, that I would be happy to still say the debate was still consistent with that, and it might just be a slight change there. And again, if the seconder was happy with that, then I'd be happy to change that and then go to the vote, but that's entirely up to you.
Sure. I'm happy to amend it to First Nations. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So that would then be, it shall be a First Nations name, so just specifically replace traditional owners with First Nations. So Councillor Burns is a seconder of that. You're happy with that? Yeah, okay, radio. So that's fine. I'll code your right of reply in one moment, Councillor Wright. So the 3 and 4 I read out a moment ago, I won't read them out again, but essentially Darra Bridge shall be it shall be a First Nations name relevant to, etc. So a straight replacement of traditional owners for First Nations. And again, I think the debate was still the same. They were similar enough, and that was certainly raised through that process. So no other questions or debate, councillors. If there's no others, then Councillor Wright, as the mover of the original motion, has the right of reply. Councillor Wright, you can respond to anything that was said in the debate, not new material.
No, thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's been some good debate over the item already. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So this is the amendment only. Points 3 and 4 to be added on. I'll ask for all those in favour of the amendment. Okay, all those against? I'll declare that carried. Thank you. So that now becomes the motion. So the motion is now 1, 2, 3 and 4 all together. And so we can then debate that separately as a separate debate now if we wish in terms of that overall motion, the substantive motion. So any further discussion or debate on the motion now as it stands? No? Okay. So we've got the motion 1, 2, 3 and 4. All those in favour? All those against? Did you vote twice, Councillor Showery? I'll do it again just to make sure. Sorry. So all those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Oh yeah, thank you, councillors. Good work. Okay, the next item on the agenda, CCL 23/313, report of the Culture and Community Committee. Councillor Goff, so moved.
I move that, Mr.
Just wait for it. Yep.
I'll move that motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Have someone second that, please. Thank you, Councillor Black. Councillor Showery, do you wish to declare a conflict?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I declare CCC 23/92 non-pecuniary and less than significant. I was with the Orison committee before, but not any longer. And I'm staying in the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Showery. So we have that. Councillor Goff, do you wish to speak to your motion?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further discussion or debate on CCL 23/313? Being done, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item is CCL 23/314, report of the Corporate Services Committee. Councillor Showery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move CCL 23/314 that the report of Corporate Service Committee meeting held on the 9th November 2023 be adopted, save and accept item CCC 23/65 and item CCC 23/68, which will be dealt with separately.
Thank you, Councillor Showery. Have someone second that, please. Thank you, Councillor Burns. Now, just before I ask Councillor Showery to speak to that, are there any other items you would like to remove? Any other councillors like to remove any other items from that? No, Councillor Showery, you wish to speak to that motion for the rest of the committee meeting?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any other discussion or debate, councillors? There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item, thank you, Councillor Showery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move CCC 23/65 Independent Financial Sustainability Review report.
Thank you, Councillor Showery. Have someone second that, please. Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Now, Councillor Showery, do you wish to speak to that particular item?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, do you have an amendment there?
I do. Thank you, Mr Mayor. There's already one point noted on there that Council determined that considerations of a special rate variation application to Independent Pricing and Regulatory Tribunal New South Wales, IPART, be deferred until 2025-26. And a new point 2, that Council develop an organisational sustainability review and improvement plan as part of the development of the 2024-2025 operational plan and budget process. Thank you.
Thank you. You have an amendment there. Move. Someone second that, please. Second by Councillor Mann. Councillor Wright, do you wish to speak to your motion, to your amendment, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I did make mention of this briefly a little earlier in regards to the Financial Performance Committee meeting that was held a few days ago. Look, the report that was provided to us from AEC, the Independent Financial Sustainability Review, obviously a substantial document which contains a significant amount of information in it, but certainly at front and centre of that is some strong recommendations as to what this council, or the decisions that this council needs to make to remain sustainable in the long term. Obviously, special rates variations is a part of that, and those types of decisions aren't made lightly by any council, and certainly I see them as a decision that's made as a last resort. And prior to that, I think this council has an opportunity before making that decision to look internally and find some ways to maintain some levels of efficiency and some cost savings before we go ahead and make any decisions on any future special rates variations. And I know the council currently is undertaking some service reviews already, a number of those across a number of facets of the council, of the business. We just heard only a few minutes ago from the customer service team who are already creating some efficiencies internally with some different ways in which they're conducting business with ratepayers and customers alike. So I think this provides a great opportunity for council to be quite transparent and show the community the ways that they are trying to scrape the barrel, if you like, and save as much money as possible before any of those decisions are made going forward. And I think and the improvement plan as part of that 2024-25 operational plan and budget process will demonstrate that to community before those tough decisions are made potentially later next year. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Now, for the amendment, discussion or debate, councillors, on the amendment only. No discussion or debate, councillors. So the amendment, which is point 2, as Councillor Wright read out, point 1 stays the same, point 2 adds on. No further discussion or debate on that. Councillor Chowdhury, you have a right of reply to anything that Councillor Wright said there as the mover of the original motion.
I'm good, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Thank you, Councillor Black. Do you have an amendment? So we've got, sorry, that's now the substantive motion. Number 1 and 2 is now the motion as it stands. Councillor Black.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A further amendment to what we've got so far is along the lines of this: that the CEO provide a report to the March 2024 ordinary meeting of council outlining the differences in staffing levels between Dubbo Regional Council currently and the number of staff employed by the combined former Dubbo City Council and Wellington Shire Council on day 1 of the council amalgamation.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Have someone second that, please. Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Black, do you wish to speak to your amendment?
Yes, thank you. This is just about getting a baseline of looking at where we've been, where we currently are, and then we've got somewhere to go forward. We just need the data, I feel, that let's have a look at our staffing numbers, let's have a look at where we can make efficiencies, let's have a look at, are we doing it the best way possible? Are there 500 extra staff now than there were when we were 2 separate councils? But it's just about getting a bit of a look at where the staff are, getting us some info on which way we can go forward with looking at where rates are going to go into the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Other discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Ivey.
I would support the amendments, including Councillor Black's, although I do wonder, to be quite honest, how much use that information will be. I mean, yes, it's one thing to look at the staff numbers, but then you've got to look at, for instance, gross income. What work are we doing? You need to actually look at the staff numbers in relation to the output, and the output can be measured in different ways. But nonetheless, I think, as I say, I would support the motion because it is some information that may well be useful, but I think the interpretation of that will have to be undertaken with a bit of care. The other thing, just general comment I'd make about both amendments is that I think it is very necessary. If you look at the latest IPART determination whereby our indexation or the rates can go up next year in 24-25 by 5%. Really, again, and you look at the way that that's been calculated, I really do think that IPART has done a bit of a 3-card trick. That it's been based upon what the expected inflation rate will be in the 24-25 year, and that's from December 24 through to June 25, where the RBA says, well, we expect the inflation rate to be back down to around about 3 or 4%. And so we're going to use that as a base for indexing the rates going forward. But what it's done is very carefully skipped over the 2 years that we've had with inflation more like 6, 7 or even 8%. And so there's been a situation where that inflationary increase has been absorbed by council without any compensation for the increase in rates. So I think that's just very unfortunate. But what it has done is increase the need for us to do the issues which Councillor Black and Councillor Wright have put in their amendments. So I would support the amendments.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Other questions? Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Happy to support Councillor Black's amendment there as well. Look, I would expect that an improvement plan would contain a fair bit of information around staffing levels would be one of those things, certainly, I think they'd look at. Council could probably turn to community. There's a lot of people with a lot of different suggestions on how council could save money, but certainly this particular document, I think, will be able to demonstrate to community again how we are working towards that. So, but they're happy to support.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Further discussion or debate, councillors? No. Councillor Shouter, you do have right of reply to the amendment as the original mover.
I'm good. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, we have the amendment there. Just remind us again, Councillor Black, if you will, just the content of that amendment.
It is that the CEO provide a report to the March 2024 ordinary meeting of council outlining the differences in staffing levels between Dubbo Regional Council currently and the number of staff employed by the combined former Dubbo City Council and Wellington Shire Council on day one of the council amalgamation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Black. So we have that before us. All those in favour? Against? Oh, sorry, you're in favour. Yep. Okay, all those in favour? Against? None. Okay, declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. The next item is CSC 2368. Councillor Shouter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the council does not progress with the undertaking, service delivery or a partnership in an e-bike service.
Thank you, Councillor Shouter. Have someone second that, please. Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Shouter, just to speak to your motion.
Just briefly saying, because at this moment, council are not doing anything with this e-bike, so I think it's good to not to proceed any further at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shouter. Other discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Black.
Could I just ask a question about this, please? So this is to, just trying to find the actual wording there. This is to not go ahead of e-bikes, but go ahead of e-scooters. Was that it?
No.
Can't remember.
No, so the motion from Councillor Shouter says nothing about e-scooters. It just says not to go ahead with e-bikes. And I think the report that came back to council talked about the fact that the caravan park does e-bikes now, so there wasn't really a need for council to go further with e-bikes. So that was the resolution from Councillor Shouter.
So can I just ask for clarification? I'm just trying to find it here in the papers, the actual 74. I was on page 70. So this is to take e-scooters out of that and leave the possibility of an e-scooter trial into the future. Is that my understanding?
Not wanting to put words in Councillor Shouter's mouth, but essentially it doesn't do anything with e-scooters. It doesn't change the position that we have with e-scooters at the moment. So everything's on the table, everything's off the table. Councillor Black?
Just a comment then, if we're going to put e-scooter trial back on the table, I thought that we'd come to a good point where we weren't going to do the e-scooters previously. I don't know why we'd want to go back and have a look at them again. So when I was down in Sydney there last week, I was walking along, minding my own business, just quietly going about my day, and there's an e-scooter come roaring along the footpath, and you can't hear them coming. So I'm just not a fan of this e-scooter trial around Track O'Reilly, if that's what it might be in the future. And I don't know why we might want to leave the door open to that. I see a few emails and stuff today and what's happened in the past regarding e-scooters, and the whole issue around e-scooters and how they've been pushed here is really a bit like the Bunnings RAF announcement 2.0 with what's happened. And basically, I'm not in favour of an e-scooter trial around Track O'Reilly, which is what's been mooted, because it's not wide enough, and scooters zipping around there, I think, aren't going to add to the experience of the people that live here. Also, yeah, the whole e-scooter, the way it's been pushed, it's a bit like the fossils thing, you know, like just we'd come to a bit of a decision. It's not really the right time to go ahead with it. I'd rather see the efforts put into where I note the other day on the Facebook, Roy Butler, MP, had a post, a member for Barwon. He had the Mayor and GM of Lachlan Shire down talking to Jenny Aitchison, the Regional Transport and Roads Minister. They've got the longest network of roads of any LGA in the state. Down there, basically pushing for more roads funding. I'd really like to see our efforts put in that sort of direction rather than e-scooter trials around Track O'Reilly. And when you look on the Facebook, people have really said that they're not in favour. Like overwhelming chatter on Facebook when it was brought up previously was that people don't want e-scooters, and I don't either, frankly. You don't want to be the first in, you don't want to be the last in, but when you see them around the place, laying around, etc., I don't think that they've got a lot to add to the Dubbo community at the moment, and I'd like to see them out of there. So I'll vote against the amendment so that we go back to the original motion, which is to take any e-scooter trial off the table until Transport for New South Wales have developed new guidelines for broader public use, and e-scooters have been identified as a priority during the development of the community strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. And when you almost got run over by one the other day, it would have been an illegal one, because e-scooters are illegal everywhere except where the trials are running, and they're not legal anywhere in Sydney. So that would have been a private operator.
Thank you. I'm aware.
So further discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Ivey.
I'll speak in favour of Councillor Chowdhury's motion, and in doing so, just pick up a couple of things that Councillor Black said. Is that he said that he doesn't want to see them on Track O'Reilly because maybe people will be interfering with walkers. Again, the trial, as I understand it, is exactly that, to find out whether that's an issue. If that becomes an issue, after the trial comes back, it'll be no e-scooters on Track O'Reilly. It's not saying that that's what's going to happen. It's saying let's have a trial. And in fact, now the issue came up in the last couple of days, and so I've done a bit of research on it. And really, in many ways, Dubbo is dragging the chain. You know, we have got trials at Foster Tuncurry, Wollongong, Armidale, Lake Macquarie. There's one about to start at Foster Tuncurry on the 8th of December. There's a trial there in a designated pathway about to start to see whether e-scooters are suitable for that area. I just think there's no real reason that I can think of why we as a council wouldn't support the idea of trialling something. If we trial it and it doesn't work, abandon it. It'll become very obvious. But let's trial it and see whether it does work. And as for saying if we trial this, therefore we won't be able to lobby for increased funding for roads, sorry, I just don't think that's logical. I think we are a big enough organisation to do both. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Other questions or debate, councillors? Councillor Goff.
Just a quick question, Mr. Mayor. Do we know a proposed speed at which these e-scooters would be going at the trial?
There is, in the recommendations from Transport New South Wales, the maximum speed allowed for an e-scooter on somewhere like a shared pathway is 10 kilometres an hour, and the maximum speed they're allowed to go to on roadways is 20 kilometres an hour. But I will say that this is not a motion about going ahead with a trial. This is just a motion about removing one part that wasn't necessary.
Okay, just removing community angst.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Other Councillor Mann, then Councillor Wright.
I'm not sure I agree with removing part two. That doesn't preclude us from becoming involved in a scooter trial once Transport for New South Wales have actually developed their guidelines, and also that it's been part of our community strategic plan that people are asking us why haven't we got them as part of the consultation in building these reports that we got. That was flagged in there. So I'm not saying we don't do an e-scooter trial, but I think we've got some protections built in here that it's going to be well and truly trialled before it gets onto Dubbo Street. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'm happy to support the amendment. Probably on a different angle to Councillor Ivey, though. Like I said, this to me doesn't suggest that council will undertake an e-scooter trial or otherwise. I would assume that if council did or was at some stage in the future going to undertake an e-scooter trial, that would come before this council to make that decision on. And I can't see that we're making a decision on an e-scooter trial here tonight. All we're really doing is talking about this the particular e-bike and removing the thoughts of e-scooters because that's a conversation we'll have if that comes before this council at some stage in the future. That's how I interpret that, which is probably a bit different to the way it might have been interpreted by some of my fellow councillors, maybe, I'm not sure. Thanks.
I might just get, based on that, Councillor Wright, I might just get some clarification from the CEO, if you like, on our current position, if you like, and what would have to happen if anything did go forward with those, if that's okay with you, CEO?
So the current resolution on the books from the 24th of November 2022, which was resolution point 2, was that council provides further requests to New South Wales Government to consider extending the opportunity to participate in e-scooter trial later in 2023 following appropriate community consultation period and finalising project details. So that's why the report in the committees referenced e-scooters, because there was a resolution not just about e-bikes, there was that reference to e-scooters and trials. So that's why what's been put forward is proposing to amend what the original recommendation from staff were.
And to answer Councillor Wright's point, though, that it's obviously nothing can happen without it coming back to council, and following that current resolution, it would need community consultation, finalising project details, so there's a fair bit to do if anything was to go ahead.
Based on the resolution, yes, I don't think there's anything compulsory in the Transport for New South Wales because they haven't got their guidelines yet, but based on the existing resolution, we would have to do community consultation, finalise project details. Necessarily, because it's a resolution, I would be bringing that back to council.
That helps, Councillor Wright.
Certainly does. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Further questions or debate, councillors? Councillor Chowdhury, as the mover of the original motion, you have a right of reply.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. We had it before us at the moment, councillors. That's just point 1 from CSE 23/68. All those in favour? Against? Okay, that carried. Okay, thank you, councillors. Next item is CCL 23/315, report of the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee. Someone move that, please. Thank you, Councillor Ivey, seconded by Councillor Wright. Councillor Ivey, you wish to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I obviously support the motion. In supporting that motion, could I just make the comment that I've been made aware of the fact that there's some changes in the functioning of that committee, whereby previously councillor members of that committee had a vote on the ARIC committee, but now through the state government changes, councillors sit on the committee but don't have a vote. And it just seems that for such an important committee that looking at audit, risk and improvement, that councillors should be vitally involved in that committee and its decision making, and should be but one voting member of that committee. But evidently the state government think better, and that has now no longer, or will no longer be the case. And I think that's a great pity.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Any other comments or debate, councillors? No. There being none, I put that. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item is CCL 23/316, the draft annual report for 22-23. Have someone move the report of the Corporate Strategy Performance Coordinator. Thank you, Councillor Black, seconded by Councillor Wright. Councillor Black, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thanks.
Okay. Any other discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Wright?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I noted in the report there was 268 actions separated into 6 different themes, and of those, 82% are complete and 11 are on target. And that's 93%, or about 249 of those 268 items. So look, obviously a pretty good strike rate from the council team to hit that. I notice there's a few that are off target or deferred, but nevertheless, again, an interesting read and a pretty substantial document. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Any other discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Black, you wish to use your right of reply?
No, thanks.
Okay, councillors have that before us. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item, CCL 23/317, September 2023 Quarterly Budget Review Statement. Have someone move that, please. Thank you, Councillor Goff, seconded by Councillor Wright. Councillor Goff, do you wish to speak to that?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Other discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Wright, I'm not sure if you're looking to Councillor Ivey then or looking to me then to speak. Trying to find a spot. I know you're both bursting to have a say about this. Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. It's funny for my fellow Councillor Black over there to ask a couple of questions, but I might ask him in the forum. I noticed there's a couple of particular items there that look to be an in and out type item. I noticed one there with regards to some rural roads resheeting, so $655,000 taken out, put back in again, and certainly, sorry, this is the page 90 I'm looking at the table there. And certainly a number of other original budgeted items with variations equivalent to the same. Just wondering if you might be able to explain how that works and whether that's just got to do with timing of delivery of some of those particular items.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Through you, Ms CEO, to
Mr. Ryan. No, Ms. Bathingthwaite.
Ms. Bathingthwaite. Thank you. And you've got Mr. Ryan there if you need him.
I'll take that. I assume it's just the general adjustments, mostly our roads. September quarter is a reset period. It just adjusts for any works that weren't done the prior and a tidy up. So there was some adjustments that moved and consolidated into some general ledger numbers for resheeting up into one number and reallocation of grant funding works that weren't going ahead this year. But if there's any further clarification.
Thank you, Ms. Bassingworth. To Ms. CEO, Mr. Ryan, do you need to clarify anything further there? Add to anything of that? So does that cover your questions, Councillor Wright, or is there additional information?
No, I think I believe it may have with respect to some of that September quarter and some of the timing of carryover through end of last financial year. No, that's okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Councillor Wright. And then over to Councillor Ivey, not Councillor Black. Councillor Ivey, did you have some additional comments there?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, like everything, there's some fantastic information presented to councillors, but it is difficult to understand it or interpret what flows from it. And obviously something that's changed dramatically and a project that's been cancelled is significantly different than something where just the timing's changed or it's come in and or moved from somewhere. So I just make the comment that perhaps in future, if we can have some indication from those variations where there is substantial difference to the completion or the undertaken how a project's being undertaken, so we can actually see if there's been a material change to the operation of council or whether it's really just a timing difference.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Councillors, any further, any discussion or debate? Councillor Wright, further question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There's a couple of items. Obviously, there's been a little bit in the media of late with respect to the state government being rather generous and moving emergency services levy off home insurance policies. I think it's something that I read. I guess a question through you, Mr Mayor, maybe to the finance team, just with respect to the cost that the state government imposes on local councils or this local council with respect to the cost of an emergency services levy. That's a ratepayer cost, might be a council cost, but it's certainly a ratepayer cost that the people in our community pay. And even on top of that, further question with respect to those assets, the Red Fleet, those emergency services, rural fire service assets that council pays depreciation on, which we don't own. Obviously, again, that's a cost to this council and subsequently a cost to ratepayers. Just and again, a good example of cost shifting from a state government. But just wonder if you might be able to give us a bit of indication of what cost to community those couple of items are on their own.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. To Ms. CEO, to Ms. Bassingthwaite.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Mayor, It was reported with 600,000. It was an increase from last year's budget to this year's budget. That was a combination of an increase in the actual cost. But last year we did actually get a grant that covered some of those costs, which this year we have not been able to receive. So it was a $616,000 increase from last year to this year. Mainly that $420,000 grant that we received last year that we weren't receiving this year was the big effect of the change. And the red plate question. So the depreciation we hold in our books, we hold the red plate, what we call the plan items for emergency services. It's $1.2 million of the depreciation that we hold. There's a variety of assets that we hold on our accounts and depreciate that we have no ability to earn revenue, therefore recover their depreciation, nor do we have the obligation to replace or repair those items of fleet or plant.
Thank you, Ms. Bassingthwaighte. Any further, Councillor Wright?
No, that's fine. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think I heard a rough figure of around $1.8 million roughly to cost to community. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Wright. Further questions or debate, councillors? Councillor Councillor Goff, as the original mover of the motion, you have a right of reply.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I've got the motion before us. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item, CCL 23/318, planning proposal reclassification of Burke Hill. Can I have someone move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Mann. Seconded by Councillor Black. Councillor Mann, do you wish to speak to that? Okay, thank you, councillors. Discussion or debate? Councillor Wright, question?
Just a question, thanks, Mr. Mayor. It seems to be rather a sizable parcel of land to rezone for the purposes of a road. Maybe you might be able to elaborate on the intense attention around rezoning such a large parcel for potentially such a small purpose, if that makes sense.
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Councillor Wright. I'll go through you, Mr. CEO, to Mr. Wallace.
Through you, Mr. Chair. The reason for that is the exact alignment of the road hasn't been identified as yet, so it gives the flexibility to enable that road to operate within that land without being hamstrung for no particular reason, and that's the reason behind it.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Does that explain that, Councillor Wright?
And then further to that, thank you, Mr. Wallace. Further to that, then once the road corridor is actually designed, that surplus land, if you like, that road then separates, could then be utilised for what at that point?
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Through you,
So
Mr. CEO.
effectively it'd be used for what it currently is, a recreation resource. Yes, operational land has more flexibility in intended uses. So ultimately up to council when whether it's through adopting the delivery plan, operational plan as to uses. So it might be used as a recreational asset or some such. It still will be council's decision.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Any further? Further discussion, Councillor Black.
Thank you. I was looking through here and at all the rezonings that have happened on this block so far, and it sort of just like jogged my memory a bit while talking about the possibility of a special rate variation and how we really do need funds. But back a few years to the special rate variation that the previous not special rate variation, the value capture that the previous council talked about, where if you had a rezoning, beneficial rezoning for commercial land or for residential of more than 50 lots, then there would be a 20% payment to the community, i.e. council, for your rezoning. So if we're going to talk about hitting your mum and dad, individuals, single parents, etc., investors, ratepayers with up to 40% rate variation in the next 4 years, I think that we really do need to have a conversation that looks at all possible sources of revenue, and that may well include a bit of an exploration of, I'm not advocating either way, but should actually look at it, a value capture, as many Sydney councils do. And when you look at, there's someone I know who's got a rezoning for residential rezoning in Dubbo at the moment. Now, they're about 30-odd blocks. They wouldn't count towards that because it's not more than 50 as the previous proposal looked at. But the profit there might be about $15 million. And at a 20% payment to the community who rezone the land and council, the profit would still be $12 million. No one is not going to go ahead with a residential project because they're only going to make $12 million off 30 blocks instead of $15 million. So that might be something that we can have a look at while we're going through this whole budget repair process, rather than just, so it's like the big property developers pay rather than individual working, battling ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Further discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Mann, you have a right of reply to anything that was said during the debate if you wish to exercise it.
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Have the resolution before us, the motion before us, councillors. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item, CCL 23/319, planning proposal R23-006. Can someone move that, please? Thank you, Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Etheridge. Councillor Wright, do you wish to speak to that?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, obviously, this is another piece of the puzzle in a relatively long journey that, based on that report, suggests to me that it's going to extend on for another year or two. Look, I'm pretty excited to see this go ahead. 5,500 new homes across a vast and different sort of variation of dwellings. So obviously, it's just another step in the process to reach the ultimate goal of. I believe in that report. There it is, September 2024. So a bit over 12 months away before more community will see it again in the meantime. But nevertheless, getting closer to the end goal of hopefully being able to see some action on that particular parcel of land. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Other discussion or debate? Councillor Black.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, huge beneficial rezoning. This is going to be great for Dubbo, and we have got to a really good outcome in the end. But imagine what the value capture might be on all of that rezoned area there on blocks above commercial and blocks above 50 lot residential subdivision. So we really do need to be honest with the community and say, well, we need to discuss this. We should look at value capture. I'm not advocating for it or against it, just saying we should actually put it into the mix. You would have probably nearly a reduction in rates, certainly not a special rate variation, with what you might get off that block over time. That's just one thing that, as a council, we really do need to think about. So people could understand that. If you're whinging about your rates going up, there are other ways that we can be looking at things. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Further discussion or debate, councillors? No. Councillor Wright, you have a right of reply to anything that Councillor Black said, if you wish.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Look, and I won't make this a debate on value capture, but I certainly will make a comment with respect to it that obviously developers put themselves at a pretty high level of risk to go out and do what they do. I certainly would think that if a developer decided to entertain the idea of developing in an area that had value capture, that cost would be passed on to the payer of that block of land and it'd be built into a price. So ultimately, I would believe that the end user, the ratepayer, they'll ultimately pay it in a price of a property that they buy. That's just a comment on that, but I'm sure we'll talk a bit more about other ways to raise revenue and save money on council as we go forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Wright. So we've got that right of reply taken care of. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Next item is CCL 23/320 D23-232 secondary dwelling. Have someone move that, please. Thank you, Councillor Black, seconded by Councillor Goff. Councillor Black, do you wish to speak to that?
No, not particularly. Thank you. It's all in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Other discussion or debate, councillors? Councillor Ivey.
I just raised the issue that, as I understand it, reading the report, that really, if council is to abide by planning laws, really, as a council, we do not have much say in this. That there are particular clauses which we must abide by. In particular, I think it's Part 5, the miscellaneous provisions, Clause 5.4, which deals with the controls which really are imposed upon council in relation to this type of development. And so I think in many ways our hands are tied. As I understand it, we are theoretically or in reality, we could oppose or vote the recommendation down. but I gather that does likely to expose this council to some harsh penalties down the track from the relevant planning department. So I make that comment that I will support the recommendation, knowing that really, in reality, I don't have much choice.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. And I suppose the only other option we'd have, obviously, the gentleman in question here was going to come on a public forum but didn't end up making it. Councillors could defer the decision by a month if they so desired, and then that would give the proponent the chance to come on to a public forum. Again, I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying that that is an option, given the fact that we didn't hear from the particular proponent tonight. So I'll throw that out there. I'll continue on with the discussion or debate. So other councillors, other questions, other discussion? Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a question maybe here. We're obviously reading this report a couple of times and just getting some clarity here. It seems that this particular DA it ticks all boxes as any DA should, except for the fact that this secondary dwelling exceeds the 60, in this case, the 60 square metre limit by 2.48 square metres, and obviously it exceeds the percentage size of the principal dwelling. This is the only thing that's holding up this particular DA, just the size of the secondary dwelling and those percentages and square metre rates. Is that correct?
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Through Ms. CEO to Mr. Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And yes, the short answer is that is the only matter that's holding it up. Everything else is compliant.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace. Does that clarify that? Pretty short and sweet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a further question then. So has the applicant, have council consulted with the applicant and provided some alternative ways that he might be able to meet that square meterage or that percentage requirement by maybe reducing the size of the property by 2.48 square metres, or even potentially even increasing the size of his principal dwelling or the principal dwelling on that particular block so that those parameters are actually met? Have they been provided as alternatives?
Thank you, Councillor Wright. Through Ms. CEO to Mr. Wallace.
And I'll pass that on to Manager of Building and Development.
Thank you, Mr. Wallace, and through you, Mr. Mayor. The application has been for many months, and council have tried to resolve the matter as best we could, but the applicant is not interested really. So not much I can do, and that's why in the end we tried to have him withdraw the application because it couldn't comply, we couldn't approve it. And ultimately, that's the reason why the application is before you for your determination.
Thank you. Councillor Wright, another question?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And I know Councillor Ivey just made mention of some implications if this council did decide to go against staff recommendations. Maybe through you, Mr. Mayor, one of the staff, maybe just can you explain if this council did go against the staff recommendation and approve this particular item, what implications specifically down the track, could what ramifications could there be for council if that did occur?
Thank you, Councillor Wright. I'll go to the CEO first on that one.
Yeah, just to clarify, this is not just the staff recommendation. Staff recommendation is based on the law, the gazetted LEP, so it's an important distinction. I'll throw to Mr. Wallace for further information.
Thank you, CEO. To you, Mr. Wallace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's correct. It is a gazetted development standard, so it's an imposed requirement. Council have in the past strategically considered what parameters they want to put around that, and we've arrived at the figures we've got before us, which is a maximum of 60 metres squared or 65% of the total floor area of the principal dwelling. So that is now a gazetted development standard. It's different than a development control plan, which is a guideline, and it's expressly a figure that is not flexible. So we as staff certainly have no power to vary that. So we're talking about a minimum differential here of 2 metres squared, thereabouts, slightly over, and we understand that. However, staff certainly are bound by that development standard. Now, if council in their wisdom decided to go against staff recommendations, that would be a choice of the council. The repercussions of that, I suppose, it puts council under scrutiny. Their planning powers potentially under scrutiny. I know in the past when these decisions have been made, the Department of Planning, when they do audit it, when they do find out about it, are very keen to get to the bottom of how and why those decisions were made. Further questions can be asked in different forums. So I would just say it attracts a bit of heat and a bit of attention. I wouldn't go much beyond that because I'm not sure of the exact outcome. Beyond that, the consent is determined to be an invalid consent. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that somebody identifies it and targets it and takes action, but it is certainly classed as an invalid consent if somebody chose to.
Thank you, Mr Wallace. Further questions, Councillor Wright?
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ivey, you've got a question?
Yeah, just a question to the, through you, Mr Mayor, to the staff. Have there been other instances in past where an application has either been refused or someone's been discouraged from making an application because of this very same condition, do we know of, in the last 5 or 6 years? Have there been other instances where, I'm just thinking where if we were to override this, we would actually be going against what's happened to other applicants previously?
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Through you, CEO, to Mr Wallace.
Through you, Mr Mayor, look, I have a memory and I'm hearing talk of a past situation where that has occurred. I don't have the details before me.
Can I add a little bit to that, Mr Wallace? Not seeing in your department, but I would imagine that most people that submit a DA are doing it with some professionals, and those professionals probably would be reading the rules that are in place for Dubbo Regional Council. Therefore, you probably wouldn't get a lot of applications that come in that don't conform to that rule, because the professionals that are dealing with that would say there's no point submitting an application that they know is outside the regulations.
In this, through you, Mr Mayor, in this particular case, the examples of that are virtually zero of recent times, certainly in my tenure. That just hasn't been the case. So it's very uncommon.
Presumably based on the fact that the rules are there and people follow those rules.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I suppose, we don't go through these processes and not speak to the applicant. So we're giving guidance as we go through, and that guidance is usually understood, and the severity of the different circumstances are applied. So in this case, this is, like I said, this is a gazetted development standard as opposed to, say, a development control plan non-compliance, and those discussions usually yield sensible outcomes. And as we work with the proponent to change their plans, and in this case, there certainly are options that are viable, potentially to get us closer to a compliant application. So previously, I think it was alluded to, if the house was slightly bigger in some way, if they wanted to invest in that regard or adapt the plans of the secondary dwelling to be slightly smaller, we could find a way to get this through, and we certainly have explored that, and we're happy to explore that, and that's generally how our advice would be provided and received, and thus the outcome.
So if I can answer your question, Councillor Ivey, I think there'd be some people out there, if this went through, for example, that would say, well, I didn't put my application in of that size because I read the rules, and now I find out that the rules are flexible. I should have put that application in, or I shouldn't have listened to the staff and shouldn't have reduced the size of that, for example. So, yeah, it's a valid point you make. Other questions or debate, councillors? No? Councillor Black, you have the right of reply if you wish to exercise it.
Yes, I do, thank you. Basically, everything was in the report or the briefing, and this council follows the rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. So I have that before us. All those in favour? Against? Declare that carried. Okay, now just before we move to the last item, comments and matters of urgency, I'll just go back to Councillor Black in relation to your notice of motion of resolution. And we've had a quick look up here. Sorry? Notice of motion of rescission. Oh, did I say resolution? Sorry, notice of motion of rescission. Not going to accept anything at this meeting based on Section 372, Part 1 of the Act, which is reflected in our Code of Meeting Practice under Clause 17.3, which says a resolution passed by the Council may not be rescinded except by a motion to that effect, of which notice has been given under Clause 3.9, and Clause 3.9 is the normal resolution, the normal Code of Meeting Practice we have, that a council may give notice of any business at its next ordinary meeting with 8 days' notice before the meeting. So I won't accept any notice of motion of rescission now. Obviously, what you could do is put a notice of motion of rescission in for the next meeting under the normal process that you do 8 days before the next meeting. That makes sense?
Yes, thank you. I was fully aware of that.
Right, thank you. Okay, next item is CCL 23/321, comments and matters of urgency. So I'll start on the left with Councillor Wells and then go around from there, Councillor Black around the side there. Councillor Wells, first up.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, just a couple of things. One was on the 15th of November, we had an opportunity as councillors to go to the new residents evening down at near the information centre. Excuse me. Just found that to be a really engaging process with the community, with service providers there of a range of different services. I thought that was really a great process. It was the first time I got to attend a new residents night, and I just thought it was good. They got some awards, and yeah, so great work to for that event. So then again for the community of or our community this coming weekend there'll be the community leaders breakfast at in Wellington for people that want to come down and have a chat about any particular thing. Please, use that opportunity. That's what we do. I believe that's in Wellington from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock on Saturday. And a great opportunity to chat to the community. And just wanted to note one thing, and just sort of pay kudos to council again for the bridge work and the road work on Burrendong Way. And I'm a regular user as a citizen of that area. Come summertime, we drive out there, take the boat out, and that new bridge and roadway that has gone in out there is great. It just changes a whole lot of dangerous potential crossing and driving areas. So it's just when I went across it on last weekend, I thought it was fantastic. So well done. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wells. Councillor Black.
Thank you. Just four quick things. The assertion by Councillor Wright that value capture will push up the prices of commercial and residential blocks. I haven't seen any evidence to that in my research, but I will do more research. But I can't see that that would be the case because developers can only charge so much. The market will dictate the price regardless of whether it's a free market, and that's how it works, regardless of what people might want to charge. If it's too dear, people just simply won't buy it. Keswick blocks, possibly, for example. What did we have? Oh, Councillor Ivy's comments previously about, it was a bit of a verbling of what I said, take it that way, to do with the Mayor of Lachlan Shire and the GM down there talking to Jenny Aitchison, the Regional Roads and Transport Minister, or Transport and Roads Minister. My comments were to do with how time is spent. There's only so much time in a day and what you can focus on. I'd really like to see staff time and the efforts of the position of the Mayor focused on what we can do to get funds rather than chasing e-scooters around. Because most people, I think, would like more road funding, and good on the Lachlan Mayor for doing that. I've seen a lot of talk about toilets on Facebook of late, and that prompted me to look up the Victoria Park toilet that was funded a few months ago. And after discussions of a few people, including someone who had used the 3D printed toilet over in West Dubbo, where they were there with their 12-year-old and 8-year-old, and they couldn't let the 8-year-old boy go in the men's toilet on their own simply because they didn't know who was in there. This was a lady who was there with a 12-year-old girl and an 8-year-old boy. And hopefully, and having a look at some other toilets, public toilets that council has made around the place recently, I hope that we're not going to do that old style one where the person described it to me as a pedo-friendly toilet because you don't know who's in there. You couldn't let your kid just go into the 3D printed toilet, and they had to drag this 8-year-old boy into the girls to go against the kid's will. The kid's old enough to say, I don't want to go in the girls, but they couldn't let them go into the blokes because they didn't know who was in there, rather than the single cubicles that open to the outside with lots of passive security, and you can open the door and see if anyone's hiding in there. So hopefully Victoria Park isn't one of those old style, when the loo block is replaced, isn't one of those old style toilet blocks. And to do with the special rate variation, possibility thereof, and the situation at council, I do recall that the previous Dubbo City Council was very financial and had got the infrastructure backlog. Some people say it was down to zero. Someone else was telling me last week at a conference that it was down to $12 million. But we're hearing about huge blowouts in costs and infrastructure. What's changed? So I think if we are going to look ahead at a special rate variation, we have to have a very, very, very honest conversation with the entire community in the WLGA and say, this is where the money's going. Where's all the infrastructure upgrades? Are they all being done in one place? I'm not blaming anyone except the state government that shifted a huge amount of infrastructure upgrades onto WA ratepayers, basically, that need doing. And this is a failing of the former state government that amalgamated, or 2 terms ago, that amalgamated Dubbo and Wellington. They didn't upgrade all of Wellington's infrastructure backlog prior to the amalgamation. And I think that we should be making this a political problem for the current government and saying we can't balance the books here at council because of this amalgamation. We need money for this upgrade. We need money for that upgrade, and say it publicly. Create a political problem that can be solved with money. And I think we might do a bit better with getting some grant funding, which seems to be drying up federally and for the state government. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Councillor Chowdhury.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just highlighted a couple of things. I attended LG New South Wales conference with my fellow councillors, and it was fantastic. It was a great network, and my fellow councillor already spoken about Lou, and with Councillor Black and Councillor Wright, few of the options we have seen. In that conference, we talked to the few, like a supplier, talked to like a toilet option for Dubbo in future. Hopefully, we'll find something cheaper that would be helpful for the community. And also, I had a great discussion with Inland Rail for their progress in Narromine, because it's currently under review. So hopefully they will be in progress, because there are a lot of families that are waiting, invested money. So hopefully government will finish their review and it will move forward. Also, I would like to congratulate everyone, the people are recipient for Dubbo Day Award. It's a very prestigious award, and there's our community volunteers been awarded today. Also, I went to that new residents night with the mayor and my fellow councillor. It was fantastic night. We seen a lot of newcomers came and a good discussion, and they really want to make Dubbo as their home. And that really remind me when I first came in Dubbo and how I progressed here. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. Councillor Ivey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one thing. Last Tuesday night, I represented council at the Wellington Clontarf Academy Awards at the Wellington High School. The Clontarf organisation, as people will be aware, a national organisation aimed at encouraging a lot of male Indigenous boys, or they're really adults, to reach to stay on and graduate through year 12. And I tell you what, it was a fantastic evening, or afternoon evening. There were, in year 12, there were 10 Indigenous kids, boys, graduating in year 12. I think not very many years ago, I think there were 1 or 2 going through year 12. So it really has done a fantastic service to our community. It was really well organised. The kids themselves, or the young men, emceed it and organised it, ran it. A bit of nervousness there, but gee, they were really good. They had a series of awards, and the one that struck me most of all was, I think they called it the Employment Awards. And they listed out the names of all the Clontarf Academy members at the Wellington High School who work part-time. And so they listed, I think there were 12 kids that boys that they listed up, working at Coles, Woolworths, Kentucky Fried, Maranatha, a couple of the shops. And I just think, look, 5 or 10 years ago, that just wouldn't have happened. There wouldn't be 12 names to put up there. And so what Clontarf are doing, again, engaging the community and creating opportunities, creating training, really boosting the self-confidence. It was really, I think it was very obvious to see the achievements they'd been able to make. So I thought that was a fantastic opportunity, and I was really grateful to be able to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ivey. Councillor Etheridge. Thank you, Councillor Etheridge. Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I think I've said enough tonight. I'll pass on to Councillor Goff. Thanks.
Councillor Goff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I want to highlight from this month White Ribbon Day, which was last Friday on the 17th. Men's violence against women is a national crisis, with the Dubbo LGA sitting at DV rates 3 times higher than the state average. We need men and boys to see this violence as their problem, to be engaged with the solution and not women's problem to tolerate. This Saturday is day 1 of the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. This is an international movement to call to an end of violence against women and girls. To date, there has been 65 women killed in Australia. That's 5 more than last year in total. But abuse isn't just physical, it is coercive behaviour, online bullying, gaslighting, financial abuse, and I could go on. So as a community, we all need to be play a part in gender-based violence. So please be involved in the next day, 16 days. As a business, you can get involved with the Dubbo Violence Prevention Collective. So they're running a campaign to showcase local businesses and how they're playing their part to start a conversation and a change in the culture, to change the culture that drives violence against women. So please stay engaged over the next 16 days, starting from Saturday, 16 days of activism. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Burns.
I've got nothing to say, thank you.
Councillor Burns. Councillor Mann.
No, thanks, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Just a couple of brief ones. Councillor Wells did mention the community leaders meeting this Saturday in Wellington. So that's from 9 to 11. It has been moved because of the rain. So it's at the markets, the Rotary markets. So they've been moved to Percy Street, and the councillors and our state member will be at the plaza near the Western Gallery. So we'll only have our state member and councillors obviously there. Our federal member is a bit not confident that he loves the idea of the community, meet the community leaders. So he's not coming along to this one. He's waiting to see whether they're successful before he comes along to any future ones. So Dubbo Day, people have mentioned, and fantastic to see some councillors out at the Dubbo Day presentations today. 10 people were given awards today. Good to see some former councillors come along there as well. So it's nice to recognise the contribution they've made. But it is a very uplifting day to just hear from people in terms of what they've done and some of the citations for those. And thank you to Ms Wade and Ms Fernando for the wonderful work they did in getting those citations done and all the work they did in relation to that. New Residents Evening was a fantastic night, and the Tony Childs fundraiser last Saturday night was a great night as well in terms of the Iran Support Services having someone of the calibre of Tony Childs in Dubbo. Was fantastic and well supported there. And the season launch for DRTCC is on Sunday. So if you haven't got your ticket to the season launch, then I'd recommend people get it. It's a great glimpse of what's going to be happening over the next year. And certainly on Councillor Goff's point, White Ribbon Day, I was there in Dubbo last Friday, at the Rotunda. And what was quite confronting was around the Rotunda, there were a number of service providers there, and TAFE had actually done some paper cutouts and put them around the Rotunda, which looked lovely until you worked out the fact that each one of those paper cutouts was one domestic violence report incident in our LGA in the last year. And I don't know how many were there, but there were hundreds. And Councillor Goff mentioned some of those deaths. I mean, I think it's an average of about 1 death per 5 days at the moment in Australia from domestic violence. So pretty scary numbers, pretty scary stats. So whatever we can do to support that. So that is the end of that particular item. I've got now some confidential items. Under Section 10A of the Local Government Act, the next items have been identified as likely to be discussed in a closed session of council. Can I have someone move us into confidential session, please? Councillor Chowdhury, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Burns, thank you. And before I do that, we've had no applications from members of the public to make their representations regarding whether the meeting should be closed to the public. There are no members of the public gallery here at the moment, so I won't ask if anyone wants to come forward with that. So all those in favour of moving to confidential? Against? Declare that carried. The streaming will now be turned off. Any members of the public will be asked to leave the chamber. The chamber will be reopened and the live stream restarted after deliberations on these matters, with the final resolutions to be made public. Please stop web streaming. And right to go? Okay, thank you. The council has returned to open session at 7:55 p.m. Welcome back. I will now read the resolutions from the confidential session of council. In relation to CCL 23/322 battery energy storage systems, the council resolved that 1. Council provide draft terms to the State Government Department of Planning and Environment for the planning agreement offers as included in the report. Point 2. That a report be provided to the December 2023 council meeting, which includes an amendment to the Renewable Energy Benefit Framework to incorporate battery energy storage systems. Point 3. That all documentation in relation to this matter remain confidential to council. In relation to CCL 23/323, recruitment of independent to ARIC, the motion from council is point 1, the council note Councillor Chowdhury's apology to the interview panel. Point 2, that all participants be thanked for submitting their applications. Point 3, that the successful candidates for the next term of the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee will be Chairperson Mr J Walkham, Committee Member Mr T Breen, Committee Member Mr G Matthews. Point 4, that all documentation in relation to this matter remain confidential to council. In relation to CCL 23/324, People, Culture and Safety Quarterly Metrics Report, the motion from council is that point 1, that the information contained within the report of the Manager, People, Culture and Safety dated 6 November 2023 be noted. Point 2, that all documentation in relation to this matter remain confidential to council. There are no further items for consideration of the ordinary council meeting. I declare the meeting closed, the time being 7:57 p.m. Web streaming is now being completed. Thank